The family dinner ended when my plate shattered against the tile floor, porcelain shards slicing into my wrist, blood seeping through my brother's laughter. She deserves hunger. They called it discipline. I called it the final boundary. Next week, I'd orchestrate another dinner more crowded, brighter lights, with cameras rolling, lawyers present, and bills they'd never dared to open. And when the sound of silverware against china rang out, I'd snap the fork of power they'd used to stab me for 30 years. My name is Rainey Collins, and I should have known better than to come back for the Sunday roast. The dining room at Whitlow's table gleamed with its usual forced perfection, crystal glasses catching the overhead lights, silverware aligned like soldiers awaiting inspection. 35 years in business, my mother Elaine kept saying, her voice pitched high with pride as she floated between tables of cousins, old business partners, and townspeople who still believed in the myth of our perfect family restaurant. Rainey, sit, Victor commanded from the head of the table, not looking up from the wine he was pouring for himself. My father's voice still carried that edge that made my childhood spine straighten automatically. At 34, I felt my shoulders tense the same way. The mahogany chair scraped against the floor as I pulled it out. Brody smirked from across the table, already 3 drinks in, his collar loose and eyes glassy. My younger brother at 31 still wore arrogance like cologne, overwhelming and impossible to ignore. Finally gracing us with your presence, he muttered, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. Thought you were too good for family dinners now that you've got your fancy analytics job. I didn't rise to the bait. Harbor and Pine Analytics wasn't fancy, it was freedom. A steady paycheck that didn't come with emotional manipulation as a signing bonus. The roast beef arrived, glistening and perfect, just like everything else in this performance. Elaine carved with practiced precision, serving Brody first the choicest cut, the way it had always been, then Victor, then the cousins. I watched the ritual, my plate still empty, waiting. Before we eat, Elaine announced, producing a folder from beneath her chair. We have a small family matter. The folder slid across the table toward me. Legal documents, loan papers, Brody's name at the top, mine on the signature line for co-signer. It's just temporary, Brody said, not meeting my eyes. The restaurant needs updated equipment, new freezer units. You know, overhead. I opened the folder. $75,000. My stomach turned not from hunger, but from recognition. This wasn't about freezers. I'd seen the gambling markers in his car last month, heard the whispered phone calls about extensions and interest. No, the word hung in the air like a dropped knife. Excuse me. Elaine's voice sharpened. I said no. I'm not co-signing another loan for Brody. Not after the last 2 that somehow became my responsibility when he defaulted. Victor's hand slammed the table. Glasses jumped. Conversations at other tables stuttered to a stop. You ate at this table for 18 years, he growled. Every meal, every dollar that went into raising you came from this restaurant. You owe this family. I owe... My voice stayed steady even as my hands trembled under the table. I worked 60-hour weeks here through high school for $2 an hour under the table. I think we're square. Elaine's hand moved swift, decisive. The plate of roast beef that had finally been placed in front of me slid away, then lifted. For a moment, she held it suspended, her eyes meeting mine with that familiar look of disappointment mixed with threat. Then she let go. The crash was spectacular. Porcelain exploded against the tile, sending shards in every direction. A piece caught my wrist as I instinctively raised my hand to shield my face. Blood welled immediately, running down toward my palm. She deserves hunger. Brody laughed, the sound ugly and satisfied. Always did, always will. The room spun with forced normalcy nervous laughter, my mother already gesturing for staff to clean up, my father pouring another wine as if nothing had happened. But I felt the weight of 30 years of similar moments crystallizing into something harder than the shattered plate at my feet. I stood slowly, cradling my bleeding wrist with my other hand. My phone was already in my pocket, recording everything a habit I'd developed after the last family gathering where they'd conveniently forgotten their threats and promises. "You're right," I said quietly, backing away from the table. "I do deserve hunger, the kind that drives you to feast on justice instead of scraps of approval." I walked out through our kitchen, the one where I'd spent countless hours washing dishes as punishment for imagined sins while Brody played video games upstairs. The staff avoided my eyes. They knew. They'd always known. In my car, I photographed the gash on my wrist, the blood on my dress, saved the audio file to 3 different cloud services. My hands moved with strange calm, even as my mind raced ahead to what would come next. They thought hunger was their weapon to wield. They had no idea what I'd been feeding in the dark. The scar on my wrist would fade, but the memories carved deeper grooves. I was 7 the first time they used hunger as a weapon. I'd spoken up during dinner, corrected Brody when he lied about breaking Mom's vase. The punishment was swift, my plate pulled away, sent to bed without eating, listening to them laugh downstairs over dessert. "Children who tell tales don't deserve meals," Elaine had said, her voice carrying up through the heating vents. By 10, I knew the rules. Speak only when spoken to. Never contradict Brody. Wash dishes until my hands cracked from the industrial soap. The basement became my second bedroom, a concrete room where I'd spend hours after any perceived slight, surrounded by restaurant supplies and the smell of industrial bleach. Brody learned the game early. He'd deliberately create messes, break things, steal money from the register, then watch with satisfaction as suspicion fell on me. Rainie's going through a difficult phase. Our parents would tell concerned teachers who noticed my exhaustion, my thinness. Meanwhile, Brody got a car at 16, new gaming systems, cash whenever he asked. The restaurant itself was built on similar patterns of control. Whitlow's Table, pride of Maple Ridge's historic downtown, with its exposed brick walls and farm-to-table mythology. But I knew what happened in the kitchen. Cash wages that bypassed payroll taxes. Servers working 12-hour shifts but clocking out after 8. The tip pooling system that somehow always left Brody with the lion's share when he deigned to help out. I'd escaped to college on academic scholarships, waiting tables at other restaurants to learn how they were supposed to run. That's where I met Joelle, who'd later become Whitlow's manager for 2 terrible years. She'd left abruptly one December, but not before copying 3 years of scheduling records onto a personal drive, Insurance. She'd called it. After graduation, I'd stayed away, built a career at Harbor and Pine Analytics, studying data patterns and compliance issues for other companies. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd become an expert in catching the exact kinds of violations my family committed daily. But they always found ways to pull me back. Family emergency, they'd say. Brody's gambling debts, the restaurant's tax troubles. Each time, they'd frame it as my obligation, my duty to the family that had sacrificed everything to raise me. 2 years ago, I'd co-signed a loan for kitchen equipment that never materialized. The $40,000 vanished into Brody's cocaine habit and sports betting. When he defaulted, the bank came after me. I'd paid it off by emptying my savings, working overtime, living on ramen, a return to the hunger they'd taught me to endure. 6 months ago, another loan, $20,000 for restaurant marketing. I'd found out later it went to cover Brody's DUI lawyer and court fines. That one nearly cost me my apartment. Each time, the same pattern: emotional manipulation, then financial abuse, wrapped in the language of family loyalty. Victor would rage about ungrateful daughters. Elaine would cry about keeping the family together. Brody would smirk and make another joke about how I deserved whatever came. The restaurant thrived on this foundation of exploitation, not just of me, but of every teenager hired at training wages and kept there for years, every server forced to work off the clock, every vendor paid in cash to avoid paperwork. The Department of Labor had received complaints before I'd checked the public records, but somehow, inspections always found everything in order. Small-town connections, favors owed, Inspectors who ate free every Sunday after church. I still had the text messages. Years of them. Elaine's guilt trips. Victor's threats to cut me off from the family if I didn't comply. Brody's constant demands for money, followed by vicious attacks when I refused. Screenshots saved, backed up, filed away with the kind of meticulous care I applied to data analysis at work. The pattern was clear as any spreadsheet extract maximum value while providing minimum return. They'd monetized their parenthood, turned family bonds into financial chains, but patterns could be broken, systems could be audited, and sometimes the hungriest person at the table was the one who'd learned to document everything while pretending to starve. Mr. Kepler next door had cameras that caught our driveway. He'd mentioned once how they recorded the late-night restaurant supply deliveries, the ones that came at 2 or 3 in the morning, always paid in cash from an envelope Victor kept in his jacket. Joelle still answered my texts. She lived in Denver now, but she remembered everything. The forced overtime, the altered time cards, the health department violations covered up with bribes and free meals, and Nate Alvarez from the Maple Ridge Gazette had been sniffing around for years, sensing a story but never finding the insider willing to talk. I touched the fresh scar on my wrist, felt the raised skin still tender from last Sunday's explosion. They'd taught me hunger. They'd taught me patience. They'd taught me to clean up messes and keep silent about the dirt. They'd taught me everything I needed to destroy them. Mara Dunley's office smelled like coffee and Justice Black roast and legal briefs scattered across a desk that had seen 20 years of labor battles. "Show me everything," she said, pushing her glasses up. We'd been friends since college, but this was the first time I'd come to her professionally. She specialized in employment law, had taken down 3 restaurant chains for wage theft in Colorado alone. I laid it out methodically. The photos of my wrist, the audio recordings, years of text messages, bank statements showing the loans I'd been forced to cover, everything organized in labeled folders, chronological and categorized. Jesus, Rainey. She studied the hemorrhaging financial documents. This isn't just family dysfunction. This is systematic fraud, assault, extortion. Her fingers traced the labor violations I'd documented. And this tip pooling scheme that alone could trigger federal investigation. "I want to bury them legally," I said. "Not prison, though Brody might earn that himself, but complete financial and reputational destruction." Mara leaned back, mind already building the architecture. 3-pronged approach. First, personal protection. The assault last Sunday gives us grounds for a restraining order against Brody, possibly your parents. Document everything going forward, every text, every encounter. She pulled out a legal pad, writing rapidly. Second, the labor violations. We file complaints with the Colorado Division of Labor Standards and Statistics. Wage theft, overtime manipulation, illegal tip pooling. The penalties alone could reach 6 figures, plus they'll owe back wages to every employee for the past 3 years. And third, the IRS. Her smile turned sharp. Cash payments to avoid payroll taxes, underreported income. The whistleblower office pays 15 to 30% of collected proceeds. You could fund your retirement on what they owe. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to contacts. Joelle Rodriguez. She managed the restaurant for 2 years, has Google Drive backups of scheduling software, payroll records, everything. She's willing to testify. Beautiful. Who else? Mr. Kepler, neighbor for 15 years. His security cameras caught the cash-only overnight deliveries. He's documented vehicle plates, timestamps, frequency. Says he's tired of the noise and tired of watching them operate above the law. Mara's pen flew across the page. Current employees. 2 servers, both under 21, both forced to work off clock. They're scared but angry. Sarah Brennan and Marcus Webb. They've been keeping their own records since I reached out quietly last month. And this journalist, Nate Alvarez, been investigating restaurant labor practices for a series. He'll hold the story until we file official complaints once everything above board, but once it's public record. He runs the exposé. Mara nodded. Smart. Protects you from defamation claims while maximizing damage. She opened her calendar. The 35th anniversary gala. When? Next Saturday. 7 in the evening. They've invited half the town, all their business contacts, the Chamber of Commerce, potential investors for Brody's expansion plans. Perfect! Mara's expression reminded me why she'd never lost a wage theft case. Public humiliation hits harder than private justice. We file everything Friday afternoon too late for them to get lawyers to block anything, but enough time for the agencies to prepare Monday visits. But at the gala itself, you attend, bring witnesses. I'll be your +1 as friend, not lawyer, until needed. We want them comfortable, confident. During the speeches, we present evidence, not allegations, but documented facts. Screenshots on screens, audio if necessary. I thought about their faces, the room full of people who'd believed their performance for 35 years. They'll explode. Let them. Every threat, every assault, every intimidation attempt just strengthens our case. That's why we file the restraining order first if Brody so much as steps toward you aggressively. He's arrested on the spot. She pulled out her phone, already texting. Health department contact owes me a favor. Anonymous tip about cold storage temperature violations. Plus photos you'll provide. They can schedule a random inspection that happens to coincide with the gala. You think they'll really inspect during the event? Health violations during a packed restaurant event. They'll have to. Public safety trumps social comfort. We spent the next 3 hours building the timeline. Every document uploaded to secure servers. Every witness contacted and prepped. Mara connected me with a process server who'd ensure papers were delivered precisely when needed. One more thing, she said as I stood to leave. This burns every bridge with your family. There's no coming back from this. I thought about 18 years of hunger, decades of manipulation, the scar still pink on my wrist. They burned the bridge when they broke the plate. I'm just documenting the ashes. Then let's make sure it's thorough. She handed me a business card. Therapist who specializes in family trauma. You'll need support after this explodes. Outside her office, I sat in my car and texted Joelle. It's happening. Next Saturday. Can you make it? Her response was immediate. Wouldn't miss it. Bringing my receipts literally. Mr. Kepler answered on the first ring when I called. About time someone stood up to them. I'll be there with bells on. And USB drives. Sarah Brennan texted back simply, we're in. Marcus says he's bringing his own documentation too. The pieces were aligning. The feast of consequences was being prepared. They'd taught me that hunger was punishment. Next Saturday, I'd teach them it was motivation. The first domino fell on Tuesday morning when Sarah Brennan texted me a photo of the new schedule. Look at this BS. Her message read, scheduled for 38 hours, but they're making me clock out after 29 to avoid overtime. Still have to work the full shifts. Marcus Webb confirmed the same pattern. The ghost hours were adding up servers working full-time, but paid part-time. No benefits. No overtime. I had them document everything photos of the actual schedule versus the official one. Timestamps of real arrival and departure versus what got logged. Wednesday afternoon. I slipped into Whitlow's table through the back door during shift change. The kitchen staff barely noticed I'd been invisible here for so many years. They still looked through me. I photographed the temperature logs on the walk-in freezer, noting the pencil eraser marks where numbers had been changed. The thermometer read 48 degrees. The log showed 35. You shouldn't be here. I turned to find Diego, one of the line cooks, watching nervously. Just visiting, I said, then quieter. How long has the freezer been running warm? He glanced around, then whispered, 3 weeks. Victor says repair's too expensive before the gala. Just keep adjusting the logs. Another photo, another violation, another nail. Thursday brought the first real confrontation. I was leaving Harbor and Pines parking garage at 6:45 in the evening when Brody appeared by my car. His eyes were bloodshot. Clothes wrinkled the telltale signs of a 3-day bender. You think you're smart, he said, blocking my driver's door. Mom told me you've been talking to people, asking questions. I kept my phone recording in my pocket, hand steady on it. Move, Brody. Or what you'll run to Mommy. He laughed, that ugly sound from Sunday. Oh, wait, Mommy hates you too. I said move. He stepped closer, breath sour with whiskey. You owe me. You owe all of us. That fancy job, that car, that attitude you got all that because we fed you, housed you. You mean the job I got despite you all, the car I bought after paying off your gambling debts. His hand shot out, grabbing my wrist, the same one with the fresh scar. I gasped at the pain, and he squeezed harder. You're going to sign that loan, he hissed. You're going to shut up about whatever you think you know, or you'll what? I kept my voice steady despite the pain. Hit me in a parking garage with cameras with security 20 feet away. His grip loosened slightly as he noticed the security booth, the guard watching us. Everything okay, Ms. Collins. The guard had approached, hand on his radio. No, I said clearly. This man is harassing me. I'd like him removed from the property. Brody released my wrist, stepping back. This isn't over. You're right, I agreed, rubbing my wrist. It's just beginning. Security escorted him out while I filed a report, adding photos of the fresh bruises forming over my scar. Another documented incident, another piece of evidence. That night, Mara called. Restraining order approved. Temporary for now, but it covers the gala. If he comes within 50 feet of you, he's arrested. Friday morning, I submitted the formal complaint to the Division of Labor. 23 pages of documentation, witness statements, photographic evidence. The clerk date-stamped it at 11:32 in the morning, officially opening the investigation. At 2:15 in the afternoon, I walked into the IRS building downtown and handed over my whistleblower packet, Form 3949A, and 200 pages of supporting documentation showing 5 years of tax evasion. The agent's eyebrows rose as she flipped through it. This is thorough, she said. I work in analytics. I appreciate complete data sets. She stamped the receipt. You'll be contacted if we need additional information. By 4 in the afternoon, an anonymous tip had reached the health department about temperature violations and improper food storage at Whitlow's table, complete with photos and employee statements. They logged it for urgent inspection. Elaine called me 37 times that evening. I didn't answer. The voicemails progressed from confused to angry to threatening to pleading. The last one, left at 11:43 at night, was her crying. You're destroying us, she sobbed into the phone. Your own family. How can you be so cruel after everything we've done for you? I deleted them all, then backed them up to 3 different cloud services. Evidence of harassment, evidence of guilt. Saturday morning, I woke to a text from Nate Alvarez. Sources confirm health inspection scheduled for tonight. I'll be there covering the gala. Camera ready. Joelle drove up from Denver, meeting me at a coffee shop that afternoon. She pulled out a thick folder. Every scheduling record, every altered time card, every forced clock out. She smiled grimly. I also have emails between your parents discussing how to avoid overtime laws. They weren't very careful with their passwords. Mr. Kepler met us there, USB drive in hand. 3 years of footage, every cash delivery, every under-the-table payment I could catch, all time-stamped, all clear enough to see faces and license plates. The pieces were in position. The witnesses were ready. The authorities were alerted. In 6 hours, the gala would begin. In 7 hours, the empire would fall. The smear campaign started Saturday morning, 3 hours before the gala. Brody's Facebook post went live at 9:17. Worried about my sister. She's been acting erratic, making wild accusations about our family business. Mental health issues run in families. Please keep her in your prayers. By 10, my phone was buzzing with concerned texts from distant relatives. Aunt Patricia called, voice dripping with false sympathy. Sweetie, Brody told us about your episodes. Maybe you should seek help instead of causing scenes. I screenshot everything, forwarding it to Mara. Character assassination, another violation of the restraining order. Technically, though proving harm would be tricky. Cousin Jeremy chimed in on the family group text. Rainie's always been jealous of Brody. Now she's trying to destroy the restaurant out of spite. The narrative was spreading through Maple Ridge like spilled wine on white cloth. I was the unstable daughter, the bitter sister, the family disappointment lashing out at success. At noon, my boss at Harbor and Pine called. Rainie, I just had a very strange visit from your father. My stomach clenched. What did he say? He suggested you might be having a breakdown, that you've been stealing company data to fabricate evidence against them. Even implied you might be embezzling. Richard's voice was carefully neutral. He said he was concerned about our company's reputation. Richard, Stop. I've worked with you for 4 years. I've seen your work, your ethics, your documentation standards. But I need to ask formally, is there any truth to these allegations? None. I can prove every document I've collected relates to their business, not ours. I've been careful to keep everything separate, on my own time, with my own resources. That's what I thought. His tone warmed. HR has been notified. If your father contacts anyone else here, we'll consider it harassment and respond accordingly. Take care of yourself. Rainie. But the damage was spreading. 2 former colleagues texted asking if I was okay. The pharmacist at Walgreens mentioned my mother had been concerned about my mental state when I picked up allergy medication. They were trying to invalidate me before I could speak. At 2 in the afternoon, Victor escalated. A knock at my apartment door, I checked through the peephole to see 2 police officers. Ms. A. Collins, we're here for a welfare check. Your family is concerned about your mental health and potential self-harm. I opened the door calmly, phone already recording. Officers, I'm fine. This is retaliation for filing labor complaints against my family's business. I have a restraining order against my brother, and documentation of harassment. They looked uncomfortable. The older officer checked his tablet. We do show a restraining order filed, but we still need to confirm you're not a danger to yourself or others. Would you like to see my documentation? I have everything organized, dated, legally filed. I'm pursuing legitimate legal channels against financial fraud and labor violations. 20 minutes later, they left with apologies. Maybe avoid family for a while, the younger officer suggested quietly. These situations can escalate. Mara texted immediately. Welfare check is harassment, adding to our file. By 4 in the afternoon, the digital assault had shifted. Someone, certainly Brody, had found my LinkedIn and left comments on every professional post. Unstable employee. Makes false accusations. Destroyed her own family. I documented everything, reported the comments, but the seeds of doubt were planted. My professional reputation, carefully built over years, was under attack. Elaine took a different approach. She called my college roommate, my book club, even my yoga instructor. The message was always the same. I'm so worried about Rainie. She's having delusions about being mistreated. We've tried to help her, but she's become paranoid. The yoga instructor, at least, saw through it. Your mom's crazy, she texted. She cried for 20 minutes about your mental break, but couldn't give a single specific example. Total manipulation. But others bought it. The book club president suggested I take some time off to focus on wellness. My college roommate asked if I needed to talk to someone professional. They were building a wall of gaslighting, trying to make me look crazy before I could reveal the truth. 5:30 in the evening, 90 minutes before the gala. A text from an unknown number, a photo of me from high school, face circled in red. Ungrateful bitch, you'll regret this. Then another, we know where you live. And another, family should stick together, or else. Mara was already on it. These are criminal threats. Save everything. If anything happens tonight, we have grounds for immediate arrest. I sat in my apartment, surrounded by evidence boxes, watching the clock. They'd thrown everything at me: reputation destruction, false welfare checks, professional sabotage, direct threats. They wanted me broken, discredited, too scared to show up. 6:15 in the evening. I stood before my mirror, applying lipstick with steady hands. The black dress was conservative, professional. The small camera hidden in my necklace was fully charged. The recording app on my phone had 6 hours of capacity. A text from Sarah Brennan. "They're all talking about you here, saying you've lost it. We know the truth." From Marcus. "Your brother's drunk already. Your mom's crying to anyone who'll listen about her sick daughter." From Mr. Kepler. "Just saw 3 health department vehicles heading toward downtown. Show's about to start." I picked up my keys, my evidence folder, my dignity. They'd tried to break me with hunger once. Now they were trying to break me with lies. But I'd learned something in those basement hours, those nights without dinner, those years of erasure. The hungrier they made me, the sharper my teeth grew. Time to feast. The Whitlow's table facade glowed with golden light. 35 years at your table, stretched across a burgundy banner. Valets scrambled to park luxury cars while guests streamed through the entrance in cocktail dresses and pressed suits. I sat in my car for a moment, watching the theater of it all. Through the windows, I could see Elaine in her champagne-colored sequined dress, playing the gracious hostess. Victor stood near the bar, all handshakes and booming laughter. Brody held court at a corner table, his tie already loosened, gesturing wildly with a whiskey tumbler. 7:05. I stepped out, feeling the weight of the USB drive in my clutch, the camera at my neck, the phone recording in my pocket. Rainey Mara appeared at my elbow, elegant in navy blue, ready, as I'll ever be. Inside, the restaurant had been transformed. Extra tables crowded the usually spacious dining room. The lights were dimmed to hide the worn spots on the wallpaper, the cracked tiles near the kitchen. Everything bathed in that forgiving golden glow that made aging things look vintage instead of tired. I saw our allies scattered strategically. Joelle sat at table 6 with her folder of documents tucked under her purse. Mr. Kepler had positioned himself near the projection screen they'd set up for Victor's presentation, his USB drive no doubt ready. Sarah Brennan and Marcus Webb worked the floor, serving champagne while their own evidence waited in the break room. Nate Alvarez stood near the back, press badge visible, camera casual at his side. He caught my eye, nodded slightly. Rainey. My mother's voice cut through the chatter. She approached with that smile, the one she wore like armor. "I wasn't sure you'd come. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Mom." Her eye twitched at my tone. "People are talking about your condition. Maybe you should leave before—" "Before what? Before Dad's big speech." I smiled back, matching her energy. "I have something special planned for that." She gripped my arm, nails pressing through the fabric. "Don't you dare." Ladies, Councilman Harrison appeared, wine glass in hand. "Elaine, your daughter looks lovely." Rainey. "I heard you're doing wonderful things at Harbor and Pine." My mother released me, smile snapping back into place. "Yes, we're so proud of her." I excused myself, moving through the crowd. Familiar faces everywhere, Chamber of Commerce members, local business owners, the bank manager who'd approved Brody's loans, all here to celebrate the illusion. At 7:35, I found my assigned seat at the center table, the place of honor for family. Ironic. Mara sat beside me, Joelle across. We'd become an island of truth in an ocean of performance. The salads arrived, wilted lettuce disguised with excessive dressing. I photographed mine discreetly date-stamped evidence of food quality the health inspector would want to see. "Attention, everyone." Victor climbed onto the small platform by the projection screen at 7:50. "Before we continue our celebration, I want to share some highlights from 35 years of Whitlow's table." The lights dimmed further. A PowerPoint began old photos of the restaurant's opening. Young Victor and Elaine, baby Brody in a high chair. No photos of me. I noticed. Erased even from history. 8:05. Through the kitchen doors, I glimpsed unfamiliar faces in health department windbreakers. They'd arrived, beginning their inspection while everyone focused on Victor's nostalgia tour. "This restaurant isn't just a business," Victor continued, voice thick with performed emotion. It's a family legacy, built on hard work, sacrifice, and the values that make America great. Brody raised his glass, swaying slightly. To family. The crowd echoed the toast. I raised my water glass, catching Mara's eye. Almost time. 8:15. Victor was wrapping up, talking about future plans, expansion dreams, the loan they'd secured for renovations, the one they'd tried to force me to co-sign. I stood. Before we continue, I said, voice carrying clearly, I have something to add to the celebration. Victor's face darkened. Rainey, sit down. A gift, I continued, moving toward the projection setup. For transparency, since we're celebrating 35 years of business, Mr. Kepler was already at the laptop, USB inserted. The screen flickered. What are you? Elaine started toward me. The first image appeared Joelle's scheduling records. Side-by-side comparison actual hours worked versus hours paid. 35 years of wage theft, I announced as gasps rippled through the room. Next slide, the ghost schedules, showing systematic overtime avoidance. Stop this! Victor lunged for the laptop, but Councilman Harrison blocked him. Let her finish. Victor, these are serious allegations. The audio began playing the crash of the plate. Brody's laugh. She deserves hunger. Then the health inspector emerged from the kitchen. Badge visible. Mr. Whitlow, we need to discuss your cold storage. 48 degrees for 3 weeks. That's criminal negligence. Chaos erupted. Donors reaching for phones. The bank manager's face draining of color. Nate's camera clicking rapidly. She's crazy, Brody shouted, starting toward me. She's having a breakdown. 2 police officers entered perfect timing. They'd been waiting outside since 8. Mara's idea. Brody Whitlow. You're violating a restraining order. Step back now. The presentation continued rolling. Tax documents, cash payment records. Mr. Kepler's surveillance footage showing those 3 a.m. cash deliveries. I pulled out the sealed envelope from my purse, handing it to the lead health inspector. Temperature logs from the past month. Compare them to your readings. Elaine was sobbing now, real tears this time. How could you? We're your family. I moved to the center of the room, pulled out the white plate I'd brought pristine, unbroken. You took my plate away to teach me hunger. I set it on the family table. Tonight, I return it, but I'm serving truth instead of silence. The final slide appeared contact information for the Department of Labor whistleblower hotline, the IRS fraud division, and 3 employment lawyers. Anyone who's been cheated, underpaid, or abused by this establishment help is available. Sarah Brennan and Marcus Webb had stopped serving. They stood with the other young servers, all pulling out their phones, documenting everything. Victor's face had turned purple. You ungrateful Mr. Whitlow, the health inspector interrupted. We're closing your kitchen immediately. You'll need to dispose of all contaminated product and cease operations until... The rest was drowned in shouting, accusations, the scrape of chairs as donors fled. I turned to leave, Mara at my side, when Elaine grabbed my shoulder. You've destroyed us. I looked at her, this woman who'd weaponized motherhood, who'd made love conditional on compliance. No, I said quietly. I just stopped letting you destroy me. The room exploded into calculated chaos. Get that camera off, Victor roared at Nate, who kept shooting, documenting every unraveling thread of their carefully woven reputation. The projector kept cycling through evidence, each slide a nail in their coffin. Falsified tax returns. Employees clocking out while still working. The photo of my bloodied wrist from last Sunday. She's lying. Brody lurched forward, whiskey sloshing from his glass. She doctored all of this. She's insane. The police officer stepped between us. Sir, you need to stay back. There's a restraining order. Fuck the restraining order. Brody threw his glass. It shattered against the wall behind me, amber liquid streaming down like tears. That's assault, Mara said calmly to the officers. We'd like to press charges. They moved toward Brody, who backed into a table, sending plates crashing. "Don't touch me. Do you know who I am? My family owns this place." "Not for long," someone muttered from the crowd. The health inspector was on his radio, calling for backup. "We need a full team here. Immediate closure. Yes, the entire establishment." Elaine had collapsed into a chair, mascara running in black rivers. 35 years, she kept repeating. 35 years. The screen switched to Mr. Kepler's footage, crystal clear video of Victor accepting cash from unmarked vans at 3 in the morning. No receipts, no documentation. "That's private property," Victor shouted. "Actually, Mr. Kepler stood, adjusting his jacket. "It's footage from my security camera of my driveway, which happens to capture your loading dock. Perfectly legal." The Department of Labor officials had arrived. Mara's timing was impeccable. They fanned out, beginning to interview servers who suddenly felt brave enough to talk. "They made me work 16 hours on Christmas," Sarah Brennan told one inspector. "Paid me for 8. Haven't seen a proper overtime check in 3 years," Marcus added. More employees started speaking up, years of suppressed grievances pouring out like water through a broken dam. The presentation reached the audio section. My phone recordings played through the speakers every threat, every manipulation, every moment of cruelty they thought happened in private. "You owe this family everything. She deserves hunger. Sign the loan or you're dead to us." Councilman Harrison was on his phone, distancing himself politically. The bank manager had disappeared entirely. Donors were practically running for the exits. "Turn it off!" Elaine screamed, standing suddenly. "Turn it off right now." But Joelle had taken over the laptop, adding her own evidence, employment records showing minors working illegal hours, safety violations dating back 5 years. Then came the coup de grace, an email from Victor to Elaine. "Don't worry about the Labor Department. Harrison owes me. It'll be handled like always." The councilman's face went white. "We have more emails," I said loudly, "about the health inspector you paid off in 2019, the fire marshal who overlooked violations for free catering. Should I continue?" The room had gone still except for the scratch of Nate's pen and the click of his camera. Victor stood slowly, his facade finally cracking. "You want to destroy us, fine, but you'll go down too. Every dollar we gave you, every meal, every roof over your ungrateful head, was paid for with my labor." I interrupted. 60-hour weeks at $2 an hour for 6 years, that's approximately $70,000 in stolen wages, not counting interest. Mara pulled out a folder. "We've done the math. With penalties and damages, you owe Rainey approximately $200,000. That's before we get to the other employees." "This is extortion," Victor's voice cracked. "No," I said quietly. "It's justice." Brody made one last desperate move, lunging past the officer toward me. "You fucking bitch!" The tackle was swift. He went down hard, face pressed against the floor their employees had mopped for poverty wages. "Brody Whitlow, you're under arrest for assault, violating a restraining order, and public intoxication." As they cuffed him, he kept screaming, "She's nothing. She's nobody. We made her everything she is." I walked over to the family table, picked up the white plate I'd placed there, clean, unbroken, waiting. "You made me hungry," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You taught me that love was conditional, that family was a debt, that I deserved starvation." I set the plate back down, centered perfectly. "But hunger taught me something you never learned. It taught me to recognize real nourishment, to distinguish between crumbs of approval and actual sustenance, to know that sometimes the only way to eat is to flip the entire table." The IRS agents arrived as if on cue, badges bright under the golden lights. "We need to see all financial records, now." Victor's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. Elaine reached for me one more time. "Please," she whispered. "We're your parents." "No," I said, stepping back. "Parents feed their children. You fed off yours." I pulled out the envelope Mara had prepared the civil suit paperwork. You'll be hearing from my lawyer about recovering my stolen wages, and the emotional damages, and the assault. The health inspector approached Victor with his own envelope. Closure notice. Effective immediately. All food must be destroyed. No one enters the kitchen until full inspection and remediation. The room erupted again, staff abandoning their posts. Guests fleeing, officials swarming. The champagne fountain someone had set up continued bubbling absurdly, golden liquid overflowing onto the floor. Nate appeared at my elbow. Front page tomorrow. This is the story I've been waiting 3 years to write. I looked around the destruction not of a family, but of a lie that had been decorated as tradition. One more thing, I called out as Mara and I headed for the door. Everyone turned. I'm not hungry anymore, and I'm done eating your silence. We walked out as the empire collapsed behind us, the sound of shattering illusions sweeter than any dinner bell they'd ever rung. The morning after came wrapped in consequences. Nate's article dropped online at 6 a.m. with the headline, 35 Years of Wage Theft, How Whitlow's Table Starved Its Workers. By 8, it had been shared over 3,000 times. The comments section exploded with former employees adding their own stories. Years of suppressed truth finally finding voice. The health department's closure notice hung on Whitlow's door like a death certificate. Red tape crossed the entrance. Through the windows, you could see the abandoned gala-overturned chairs, wilted centerpieces, that ridiculous champagne fountain now still and clouded. Mara called at 9. Department of Labor fast-tracked the investigation. With the evidence you provided, they're looking at $300,000 in back wages and penalties. The IRS is conducting a full audit going back 7 years. Victor and Elaine's voicemails had stopped. Their lawyer had contacted Mara instead. They wanted to settle out of court. Too late for that mercy. Brody made bail, but immediately violated it by sending me a Facebook message. This isn't over. Screenshot. Forwarded to police. Back to jail he went. This time for 90 days. Minimum. The civil suit was filed Monday morning. By Tuesday, 3 other former employees had joined as plaintiffs. By Wednesday, it became a class action. 17 years of stolen wages, representing 43 employees. The bank called in their loans immediately. The restaurant property went into foreclosure within 2 weeks. Harrison resigned from city council. To focus on family matters, the investigation into his covering for health violations had begun. I returned to Harbor and Pine, where Richard had publicly commended my integrity and courage in pursuing justice through proper legal channels. My father's attempt to destroy my reputation had backfired spectacularly. 3 weeks later, I sat in my apartment, sorting through legal documents, when a knock came at the door. Through the peephole, I saw Elaine smaller somehow, designer clothes replaced with a simple sweater, aged 10 years and 20 days. I didn't open the door but spoke through it. You need to leave. Contact my lawyer. I know, she said quietly. I wanted you to know that the restaurant is gone. Sold at auction yesterday. Someone's turning it into a credit union. Silence stretched between us. Years of unspoken truths filling the gap. I taught you to be hungry, she finally said. Because I was taught the same. My mother. Her mother. We all learned that love meant control, that family meant debt. I thought I was preparing you for the world. You were preparing me to be consumed by it, I replied through the door. Yes. A pause. The prosecutor offered me a deal. Testify against Victor about the tax fraud. Avoid jail time. I'm taking it. I said nothing. I don't expect forgiveness, she continued. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know the hunger you felt I put it there. And I'm sorry. I heard her footsteps fade down the hall. No dramatic reconciliation, no tearful embrace, just an acknowledgement of damage done, a debt that could never be repaid. The settlement came through 6 months later, $240,000 after legal fees. I donated $50,000 to a local nonprofit that helped restaurant workers report wage theft. The rest went into savings, a cushion against hunger, real or manufactured. Joelle used her settlement to open her own restaurant, one with transparent wages, proper overtime, and employee profit sharing. She hired Sarah Brennan and Marcus Webb as shift managers. Mr. Kepler sent me a holiday card with a photo of the empty lot where Whitlow's table once stood. "Better view now," he'd written inside. Victor got 3 years for tax evasion, out in 18 months with good behavior. Brody drifted to Vegas. Last I heard, still gambling with money he didn't have. Elaine moved to Phoenix to live with her sister, the family name too poisoned to remain in Maple Ridge. I kept the white plate. It sits on my kitchen shelf not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Some nights, I cook elaborate meals just for myself, plating them carefully on that pristine surface. Other nights, I eat takeout straight from the container, the plate watching like a benevolent ghost. I learned something in those months of controlled destruction. Revenge isn't about causing pain. It's about refusing to carry it anymore. It's about setting down the weight they convinced you was yours to bear. They taught me hunger was punishment. I taught them it was power. The power to know exactly what you need and refuse to settle for less. Now, when I eat, every bite tastes like freedom. The scar on my wrist has faded to silver, barely visible unless you know where to look. I know where to look. It reminds me that sometimes, the only way to heal is to let things shatter completely, to let the broken pieces fall where they may, and build something entirely new from whatever remains. I'm not hungry anymore, and I never will be again. Thank you for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Your own experiences and perspectives make these stories come alive. Until next time, remember you deserve to be fed, not just with food, but with respect, justice, and love.